One of the more important public debates is around if people are valuing economic security more than economic dynamism. I think the shift in the conversation to say we need some of this guaranteed income, we need guaranteed jobs because things are uncertain. They have always been uncertain. But if we prioritize that in the short term, in the long term, we're going to have less dynamism in our economy.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, Gonzalo. What is human flourishing for you? What does this mean?
Yes. Well, human flourishing for me, it's just how people seek to live better, richer, and fuller lives. Whatever that means for them, wherever they start, they want to live better life in terms of their health, in terms of their passions, richer part that they have been able to climb the income ladder, to find better lives for themselves, for their kids in terms of material wealth as well, but also find more fulfillment. The fuller part for me, it's just that people are achieving their human potential, that they're seeking to find what is going to make them tick, find their meaning and purpose in life. They're going to pursue that. They're going to seek that besides material wealth. That is nothing wrong with that, but people are looking for that meaning and purpose as well. So for me, it's just that holistic vision of a life well lived, the good life.
So I appreciate that you're not just talking about the economic implications of flourishing, even though that's important, because a lot of people have criticized the concept of evaluating humanity's progress or flourishing just based on average GDP or numbers like that. You're talking about what really matters to people in utilizing that wealth and how to find meaning in life. But
Yeah.
how do we actually know if people are accomplishing that or not? That's a lot more difficult to measure and actually achieve, it seems.
Yes. And most of the work that we do now, in terms of the research, we focus on talking about upward mobility. And economists have the weirdest ways to what measurements we're using for that. So, upward mobility is we're tracking if people out earn their parents around the same age, usually between 32 to 40 years of age, depending on the study. So, we say if they out earn their parents around that same age, they have upward mobility and they're successful. But that's like, I think, as you just said, an incomplete measure of what makes a good life. Some people might want to pursue something that is not out-earning their parents isn't the goal. We want generations across time to be better, but that's not what we think about when it's like, oh, are you having a good life? Yes, I'm out-earning my parents. It's like, no, I'm finding my footing in life. I'm finding my meaning. And in that sense, we need to look more than just that material wealth. So how we talk about it in the work that we do is around the concept of the American dream. So we survey people across the United States in terms of that specific question. If they're either achieving their American dream, they're on their way to achieve it if it's out of reach. And for that, we ask people questions about what it means to them, because it also can mean very different things for different people. But it is about finding your calling in life by starting a business, finding your calling in life by having a good family life, that you have a happy family life, that you're present in the household, that they're pursuing a passion, a hobby. So all that stuff it is very subjective, I think, to track one specific measurement of it. But we see that through functioning markets, through better institutions, there are more paths to flourishing. And then we see that more people can pursue different avenues to maximize that flourishing. Now, it's very key to just ask people, what do they think makes them flourish? And I think we see a wide array of answers across the service that we do and what people think the flourishing means to them.
So there's a lot to unpack there. Now I want to go back to the upward mobility piece because I think this is a great concept to focus on because everyone does want their kids to do better than them, and that does seem to indicate progress in one way. And even though it may not encompass everything, if your children are earning more than you at the same age, that's a positive sign. And what are the numbers like for that in the US these days?
Yeah.
Do we still see upward mobility?
Yeah, well, we think about more as of a stagnation of upper mobility. There's some of the main studies show that in the 1940s, 1950s, 90% of people out earned their parents, and now it's more about 50%. So that's a huge decline,
That
obviously. But when we adjusted that for other like more technical issues around household size, around inflation numbers, we see that even before then, it was more about 75% and not 90%. And right now, it's sort of that same range between 65 to 75% of people still out earn their parents as adults. The problem with those other studies that they start at the point of 1940s, right after the Great Depression, where out earning your parents, it's not that it was easy, but they were coming out of one of the biggest depression in US history. So it was easier, right?
comparatively,
Comparatively, it's easier.
yeah.
But so right now, it's at least, if it's not a huge decline, where you can say it has been declining, it's at least stagnated. And that's something that I think we could do better as a country to remove the barriers to what, sort of how we can improve and not just about mobility.
So you've done a lot of research on this. Why do you think we're stagnating or actually falling behind in terms of upward mobility?
Yeah. So some of the trends, hasn't been, I think, a specific, just one measurement that could explain that 100%. But we have seen a lot of different trends across different variables. So for example, occupational licensing, which is if we need a license to do a job, in the 1960s, 70s, about 1 in 20 occupations required a license. Now it's 1 in 5. So it went from 5% to 20% of occupations requiring a license. Business dynamism, which is how many startups in a given age make up the total number of businesses. And before, like how many new businesses were created, basically. So 12% of all businesses in a given year in the 1970s were startups. And right now it's more like 8%. And the rate that businesses sort of die, like that they end up closing, is around 8%. So in the past, and that has been sort of constant since the 1970s to now. So what that means is if we had 12% of businesses were new businesses and only 8% of that total died, so we still had that 4% of new businesses that were generating, and new businesses create the most net new jobs. So we had that dynamism in our economy. But right now, if that number is close to the number of new businesses are being created, we don't see that dynamism anymore. So dynamism has been
So as many businesses are closing shop as they're starting
they're
the
starting.
US every year right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, so that has been that decline in business dynamism. So that's a big trend. A lot of economists have documented since that has been going on since the 1970s, and we've seen also increase it. So no one has pinpointed exactly why that's happening. A lot of people said, oh, a lot of businesses have just merged. There is a rise in regulation, so it could be that, but no one has really found out the root cause. But those trends are worrying in the sense that that's been happening at the same time that upper mobility has been declining. And what we focus on, what we like to think about is that the main way that people climb the income ladder is through a job. The main source of income for people is employment. So if we have less businesses being created that generate less jobs, we have less opportunities for people to find a job and climb the income ladder. So in that sense, that sort of, for us, it sort of correlates. It's not a one-on-one causality, but that correlates. Now, also, family structure has been in decline. So there's less two-parent households, and that has been shown that also that affects upper mobility trends. So I think some of those, and well, education, traditional quality has been declining. And that's been correlated with levels of upper mobility, like in the US, across some of these main studies. So I think some of those issues around school quality, family structure, and entrepreneurship and business dynamism being in decline have explained, for me at least, most of what is happening.
So look, I'm more than happy to say, and I think it's obvious that overregulation is going to hamper entrepreneurship and this kind of dynamism and is a big problem. The over licensing is a huge issue. It's crazy to think that you need to have licenses for would you say 1 in 5 occupations?
1 in 5 occupations, yes.
That just seems ridiculous, especially when you need to be licensed for to be things like hairdressers or run nail salons and so forth that weren't the case before and don't seem like they need hundreds of hours of training that are now legally required for it. But a part of this that you're starting to get into, I think, with family and education is that there's a cultural element to this as well. And in the United States, we pride ourselves on being the country of innovation, risk-taking, capitalism, and entrepreneurship. But it seems like you're suggesting that's not quite the same today as it used to be before.
Yeah, no, we see signs, I think, maybe the last few months that maybe some of that discussion, the cultural discussion around dynamism, maybe is improving. But I would say exactly that it has been, that spirit of dynamism entrepreneurship has been in decline. And what I see as one of the more important sort of public debates is around if people are valuing economic security more than economic dynamism. So how that represents itself in policy, for example, in upper mobility, we don't discuss too much, as much as I think we should. Job creation and business creation are leading to that decline or could lead to more upper mobility. We're focusing more on the welfare system, on taxes and redistribution, how we should tweak, give people more benefits in terms of a child tax credit or income tax credit, programs that would just help people get out of the worst parts of poverty. Anyway, but it's not sustainably going to help them lead a more flourishing life or climb the income ladder faster. But there's a focus on that. There's a focus on other programs that want to give people a baby bond. So have your kids have some sort of savings at the beginning in life, or guaranteed jobs, or universal basic income is, I think, one of the biggest examples. I think the shift in the conversation to say we need some of this guaranteed income. We need guaranteed job. We need things because things are uncertain and they have always been uncertain. But if we prioritize that in the short term, in the long term, we're going to have less dynamism in our economy. So I think in dynamism and growth.
But I want to jump in because you're talking about potential policy reforms here. And a big part of this, I think, is actually just the culture, the sense of what is normal, what is valued, and what is frowned upon. And one of the things that I've realized makes America unique in the world is this sense of dynamism, risk-taking, entrepreneurship. And I think at some level, it's baked into the DNA of the country.
Yeah.
It's part of the founding of the
Yeah.
country as it is. And the more I've traveled around the world, especially the last few years, I've realized that's not the case in a lot of other cultures.
Exactly.
That risk-taking entrepreneurship is frowned upon.
Yeah.
If you fail at something, that is a scarlet letter for the rest of your life. Whereas in the US, we actually revere it to a certain extent. Failure is not a bad thing. Failure is just part of learning to figure out how to get better. And I'm wondering what we can do to just inspire that culture more in America right now. What your thoughts are for how we advance that risk taking if we're seeing it decline right now.
Yes, and I think that it's sort of related to the policy conversation in the sense that that's the public narrative or the media narrative around some of these issues, or the academic and policy discussions focus on these issues, but it's part of that bigger cultural discussion that you're right, that I think it has been in decline, that sort of spirit of entrepreneurship and dynamism. Certainly outside of the United States, it's much worse, and I've traveled a lot as well, and I see that everywhere
And you're
else.
from outside of the US.
Outside of the US, exactly. And immigrants come here and looking for better opportunities. And that's already one of the ways in which we sort of express our entrepreneurial spirit. But we know we find it here more than in other places. But that has been in decline. And I think success is frowned upon outside, but I think it's becoming to be making people feel bad for their success. And I think we're not there yet. I think the majority of people still feel what you say, that the country is dynamic, that the country is entrepreneurial, that we should be taking risks. But slowly, I think some of these conversations, if we talk a lot more about UBI, it's going to lead to that. If we talk about how about billionaires are policy failures, it's going to lead to billionaires feeling, or just successful entrepreneurs just feeling bad for their success, to say, well, no, if I'm not giving back, I'm not doing well. And I think you can do both. If you want to be worried about a specific issue, you can support specific causes. I think entrepreneurs need to be more proud about the impact that they have in society, and about the impact that they had in creating more paths to flourishing for more people, either their own employees, other
100%. And I think that this ties in with what you were talking about in the beginning for what flourishing means. It's not just economic success, it's a sense of meaning.
Yeah.
And one of the ways I think we have misinterpreted and miscommunicated capitalism and business to people at large is to say it's all about the money, instead of realizing that entrepreneurs are often driven by a problem they see in the world and a solution they want to bring to the world that the market offers the best way to create a sustainable solution to. They're very purpose driven when you go and talk to them. And the more that we can do to actually get entrepreneurs and other business leaders to talk about their purpose, their meaning in life, why the business exists beyond just making money, that I think will inspire more people to support capitalism and to be dynamic in entrepreneurship and realize I should actually do the same thing. If I see this problem in the world, I need to go and start a business and figure out how to solve that in order to make sure it doesn't come up again.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And that's something that we see with a lot of business leaders, that they start with that purpose, trying to find a solution. I mean, people related to a principal business network, like a John Mackey, like other entrepreneurs who are out there saying, okay, we see a problem in society, let's address it. And let's not, as our friend Magad Wade would say, criticize by creating. I think creating a solution that starts with that meaning and purpose in their life, that they want to fix something, and they go out and address it. And I think that's an attitude that trusting your individual agency and acting on it is a key aspect of being an entrepreneur, is just acting on your agency to find that solution. So I think it's completely agree with that. And that's something we need to encourage more, and have people view their meaning in life as part of their business. There's amazing examples of how even just creating those businesses lead to others, employees, to do that. And one of the best examples that I like is the current CEO of Walmart, who started as a program associate. So Sam Walton created Walmart in the hopes of bringing cheaper goods to people, as providing goods at a price that more people can afford, employing now, I think, the biggest private employer in the world. And then someone who started as an associate in their stores back, I think, 30 years ago, is now the CEO of the company because he finds his meaning and purpose in continuing that legacy of building a great business.
That's the kind of upward mobility that we like to see, not just between parents and kids, but even within companies, that people can start at the bottom and rise to the top.
Exactly. Yes.
And those kinds of stories, I think, are incredibly inspiring. Those aren't the ones typically shared about business today, though. In the mainstream media or Hollywood, or even from so many politicians, the story is always business people are just evil, greedy, words I'm not going to be able to say here on the podcast, and always seem to be trying to tear it down instead of uplifting and celebrating the entrepreneurs and the business leaders who are doing incredible things.
Yeah. I think if you are a successful entrepreneur, what I've seen in other entrepreneurs is that the ones that are more successful are always very humble. So it's tough to ask them to come out of their shells.
See the same.
I like that. But I think that that's needed. It's not needed for, we're talking about it not in the sense like, oh no, I want you just to, we just want people to feel proud of their achievements. So you can have humility, but if you have too much of that and don't share the big message of how you started a business, how you created it, your success, in the long term helps other people, other younger entrepreneurs, other people who want to find their calling and meaning in life to act on it as well. So we need those examples, and we just need business leaders to be a little bit less humble, but not in the hopes of just changing that aspect of themselves. It's just to inspire others. And that's sometimes they're either pushed to feel bad because politicians are in their case, done with the policy failures, or sometimes that they're too humble, but we just need them to be more proud of their achievements because that's better for society in the long term. That creates more of a culture of entrepreneurship that inspires more people and that end up creating more upper mobility path, more human creation paths for others.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that I've wanted to do with Principal Business for a long time, and still young organization, we're going to get there. Maybe this is actually the impetus for us to do it, is to specifically come in and share those stories of the heroic work of entrepreneurs and business leaders who are too humble to share it about themselves. Because I get that. I have a lot of respect for it, but you're absolutely right. We need these business leaders who are doing incredible things to make America and the world better, to actually advance humanity and help people's lives out, to brag about themselves. Or if they're not going to do it, we need to brag about them so people understand the dynamism and the incredible impact that business has on people's lives. Maybe this is the time for us to say, okay, we're going to start doing that. And we're going to work together and even make a call to anyone here to write into us and say, who do you think is actually doing heroic work in business that we should be telling the story of, that we should be amplifying to the world?
I think that's exactly right. And that's much needed because that's what, as we just discussed, that's the way for more people to get inspired, for more people to see how entrepreneurship and business is what drives more paths to flourishing in a way. So I think there's many examples and we need to
So
tell
who else comes
stories.
to your mind? The Walmart example, I think, is fantastic.
Yeah. So the story of the founder of Chobani, and now I forget his name, so I'm apologies for that, but that he started, he came with nothing from, I think, Syria or Iraq, and he was just trying. He thought, I come from an area where there is a Greek yogurt being made, and I know how to do it better, and there's no market for it in the United States. And he didn't even know, I think, how to speak English at the beginning. He came, learned some English, learned how to start and operate a business, and he started, and I think he ended up slowly but surely creating a big business around that brand. But he was that meaning and purpose to bring an amazing product to the market. And now, from what I can tell, and I think he's still doing that, hiring refugees for some of these countries to work in his company. So he's finding his meaning and bringing a good product to the market and helping those in need who are coming from these at-risk countries for them to be productively employed here in building that brand that he created. So that's, I think, a great example that I really value.
Agreed. Hamdi Ulukaya, he is absolutely fantastic.
Sorry, yeah.
And I got to know him a little bit when I was at Conscious Capitalism. And that reminds me of another incredible leader, Daniel Lubetzky, the founder of Kind Bars.
Okay.
Before he started Kind Bars, he's from the Middle East himself. He actually started businesses to try and heal the divide between Israel and Palestine by actually bringing workers and customers together in the business, and use that to actually show people we can all get along. We can work together. In fact, business is the great mediator of conflicts because it's about helping other people out. It's about creating value together and saying, it actually doesn't matter if you're a different religion than I am, if you're from a different country, or if we have these other things. We can still actually work together and make the world a better place. And he's continued that on to Kind and everything else now. But that was his starting point.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. And as I said, we do need people to tell us more of these stories so we can tell them to the public. More people need to hear them. More people need to be inspired and have a more optimistic and hopeful vision of the future that we can address some of these even social issues that we just mentioned with a product, with a business, bring people together, bridge cultures, societies. So I think we just need to tell a lot of more of those stories. Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what, I want us to do that. I'm glad that you want to do the same thing. Let's work together in finding these stories and amplifying them together. Archbridge and Principal Business.
Let's do it. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. Great work.